All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the New Frontier podcast. I'm today without Max, as you can see. He's busy traveling, and but I have not one but two awesome guests today. So our guests are coming on the podcast at also a very special time, and you see why. But I actually met them like way back in April when we were all at this great event in Iceland. And I had a really interesting conversation with them over lunch. But what was really amazing and what I was like, wow, I really need to speak to these guys on a podcast is they were having a sponsored presentation. Like basically, they were sponsoring the event. Now, normally, when it comes to sponsor presentations, I've seen, and most of them are pretty as boring, kind of like usual sales pitches. But these guys went on stage and they delivered just so much value. Everybody after this went and talked to them. They had the most amazing presentation, and I was like, these guys really like they wow the entire community. And so I just thought, you know what, there is so much more to talk about with them. And actually today, like last Friday, was their company's IPO. And I am joined today by Bryce and Rob, who are the CRO and CEO of Pattern. Hello. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Awesome to have you on the podcast. So,
Awesome to be here.
how are you guys feeling? Firstly, congratulations. Friday was a special day. I saw the NASDAQ picture where you guys all look euphoric. I mean, it must be an amazing feeling.
Yeah, I mean it feels weird because it's both like the end of one thing, but it's really the beginning of the rest, right? So it's like it's this destination, but it's really not. Like it's
Yeah.
we've gotten to this and then it's really just okay, now we focus on the thing that's gotten us here, and it's definitely a milestone. But we actually think it's a good milestone for the entire industry of the Amazon industry, and not just like Amazon, but e-commerce in general, right? Like obviously Amazon being the big one in the US, but it's the start of something really interesting, I think, as well. So we're excited to celebrate and get back to it and focus on what's got us here and just continue to partner with brands. So it's been definitely a fun time though.
Awesome. I mean, like, I will ask you about the celebrations a little later, and you have to give us all the dirty secrets about, like, what really happens behind closed doors.
Of course.
But I want to actually start off with something you just said right now, which is this is really good for the Amazon community and for the e-commerce space. Now, I go to a lot of events, and over the last few years there has been obviously the euphoria of the aggregator times, and then there was the post aggregator crash, and now we are in a really actually quite challenging time for sellers. We have the
Yep.
tariffs, we have like raising FBA fees, we have increased complexity. So you know, tell us, what is the story of Amazon sellers? Like, is this still a good time to jump in and become an Amazon seller? Like, how do you see the spaces sort of evolving? And like, from your perspective, you guys have like a total success story, but like, what are the pivotal, I guess, pillars of still being successful on Amazon?
I think it's a really good question. And I mean, even in Iceland, this is something that I've said for years and something that's really important. I think the thing that is critical for brands, regardless of the time, this was true. Like it actually hasn't changed. This has been true. Like there's been noise and everything else, but at the end of the day, a brand needs to be able to be world class at selling stuff and world class at moving stuff. And each of those that's way reductive, right? Like there's
Yeah.
so much that goes into both of those things, building a great product and the supply chain, right? That there's a million individual pieces that go into those two things, but that actually hasn't foundationally changed, right? The marketplace of the e-commerce is continuing to grow. It feels worse because it's not like shooting fish in a barrel like it was back in the day, probably, but there's still so much opportunity. There's so many winners in this space. And I do think that there's going to continue to be consolidation. And I think there is a higher barrier to entry, which I actually don't think is a bad thing. Like Bryce, I don't know. I mean, you're kind of like, you interact with so many brands here on that side, but I do think that there's still an opportunity for brands to succeed. But I actually think I think it's harder to put bad products up on marketplaces and e-commerce globally, which is not a bad thing for consumers. I think it's great for people that have good products. And so, yeah, if you have a good product, absolutely. Is it harder for people that have bad products? Yeah. Is that good for everybody? I think so.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think we heard even in Iceland, a couple people saying, "Oh, I hit at the right time." It was pre-COVID, and I was buying something from this country and shipping it in, and I just kind of took off and I sold it as fast as I could. I think those days might be behind us, to Rob's point, but there's still a lot of opportunity. I mean, we're on kind of both sides of the coin, where we are a seller, but we're also helping brands in other ways, and so. There's a lot of support, a lot of specialty out there. For our selling side, we're still growing very strong. So I don't think the days are over of being a successful seller on Amazon. If anything, I think there's a lot of opportunity, but the good product has to be a part of that foundational formula now, and not just grab anything you can and throw it online.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like this is exactly like aligning perfectly with, what we're seeing from an AI perspective. So obviously this is the AI for e-commerce podcast. I have to bang on about AI, but it's true. Like, one of the biggest trends we are seeing right now, and I even wrote about this in the newsletter today, is about agentic AI shopping. So like, all of these we have like Perplexity, we have ChatGPT, we have Shopify integrating. So what we are seeing is that agents are going to start making decisions, and these decisions are going to be based on quality of products, on like price. And so I think indeed we are moving into a place where customer relationship and quality of product actually just move so much more to front and center.
I think AI is it's an incredible tool, right? It's an incredible tool. We are really just getting started on how to utilize this tool, but it doesn't change the foundational problem that brands and that we have all been trying to build in the retail space for decades. And that is very foundationally, how do we connect a product and a brand with a consumer? Yeah. And so, right, that is the problem. The problem is not use AI. The problem is, how do we use AI to tell that story, to connect brands and people? And I think that this is a different flavor, and it does change the game. It becomes a little more formulaic, right? Which I think we've been on that train for a long time now, that in order, like, there is something that you can do. There are a million things you have to do, right? To be able to get to the point where it is rather formulaic and it becomes more predictable and it becomes more digestible for humans. But the AI piece of this is, you're absolutely right. We've got to understand what needs to be adjusted. How do we continue to approach the right way to chase this? But it is still so much opportunity out there to do that thing well. You just need to be able to make sure that you're understanding, is it a good product? Do I have product market fit? And that continues to be the winner, right? Connect brands to consumers in a valuable way. That problem hasn't changed. Different flavors continue to move forward as we figure out what's next.
Yeah, 100%. I want to go back to, the IPO and like more about actually the story behind it, because, I've seen, based on and the numbers you guys are right now evaluated, if I'm not wrong, between 2.5 and 2.6 billion, which is like an insane figure. And it just like is a testament to how what a great company like you guys have built. But what is the story? Is Pattern more of a operator? Is it more of a tech company? Is it something else? Like, how did you guys essentially build this?
Yeah, it's an interesting. So Pattern's been around for 12 years, and started as a seller in a garage, and then a couple garages, and like that, very similar to a story that you've heard 1,000 times. Mm-hmm. I think where the shift really started to happen was around a shift toward leveraging technology. Like, this as well as any other seller that has been not only Amazon space, but marketplaces globally, is there are a trillion tasks that need to happen, right? Yeah. And those tasks have varying levels of automation that can happen, and decisions that need to be made, and expertise that are required. And so we have really planted our flag on the combination of technology and data driving decisions to either automate decisions or augment decisions for people to make faster, better, more repeatable decisions at outrageous scale, because you just can't, like, we couldn't do this manually. So the backbone of operational technology is in our DNA. That goes from warehouses, all of our own WMS tech, all of our OMS, like how we connect to marketplaces and globally, how we move things around the world globally. Like, so that operational tech, like warehouse operational tech, supply chain tech, and then you've got stuff like our ad tech, which is completely proprietary. It is patented technology around how we interact with marketplaces and how we make decisions there. So you literally can't do the thing at this scale without leveraging that as its backbone. But we still firmly believe that human beings are critical in how we service brands and how we think about problems and how we solve those. So getting experts and like the combination of technology and expertise is, I think, actually what kind of the secret sauce is here, right? We lean into brands, we figure out how to help them grow, but they have to have great products. I go back to that, right? If it's a great product and a good team, then we can help accelerate that. But it requires both of those, the expertise and also technology. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, you just talked about automation and augmentation. And, one of the things that AI as such is kind of, promising and in a sense starting to deliver on is exactly that. So from basically where you are right now, like, how do you see like AI has maybe helped within this sort of like, I guess, process of automation and augmentation?
Well, I mean, AI isn't, AI isn't new, right? Like, it's a thing that's been around. Sure, it's certainly news. It's gotten new life, and it's gotten new flavors of that thing. But basic concepts like machine learning and they're not basic. Actually, they're very complicated, but those have been around for a while, and we've utilized those. We've been using AI for quite a while. But there's this range from completely manual tasks that cannot be automated or even augmented, all the way through extremely automatable tasks. And if you take all the tasks from 0 to 100 that need to be done, I think the answer basically is like more of those can be done toward the automated side, right? So I think it's just moving the lever more and more toward things that we can remove decision points for people on. That's like on the operational side, but just as importantly, AI is reshaping how consumers shop and products are discovered, which, we talked about a little bit earlier. So the reality is it's not just the operational side. Operationally, like, that's how we've been able to scale better, and we're going to continue to leverage any type of tool that's machine learning. It's like agentic AI. Like, we're going to do all of those tools. We're going to scrap, and we're going to figure out how to do that as we grow and continue to scale. But it also changes the way that we think about discovery and products and how we interact with brands and how we interact with consumers. So I think it's hard to know exactly how this lands, but the reality is it is a powerful tool, but it is one of the tools that we will utilize in order to further the mission.
Yeah, I think Rob and I mean, we both worked at Amazon, and I started in 2013 at Amazon. A big part of my role while there was, how do I automate the things that I'm doing so I can work on bigger, better projects? Yeah. Now, at that time, it wasn't AI. It was just go automate it. And I think those sometimes get confused as to what's AI, what's automation, what's a formula, that kind of thing. Yeah. So to Rob's point, that really hasn't changed. Now, what you can use AI for has brought on new possibilities to automate and to, expand, scale, all of that, which is where we're trying to look. But there's some things that we should just be doing anyway. And it's not because it's trendy and because we can say we use AI. It's just we should all be looking for efficiencies and how to automate tasks that can be done. But what that should allow us to do is do more, do better, do bigger. Not just how do I get rid of people or something like that. And to Rob's point, that is not our goal. It's not how do we trim the company down to 10 people. It's just more, how do we get better and more efficient at the many different things we're working on, whether it be operations, ad strategies, whatever that looks like. A big piece I feel like that we're seeing a lot of growth in is in the, how do people find your product? How are they looking for it? mean, it used to be all SEO, now it's GEO, and trying to figure out what's the bridge between the two. So it is changing the dynamic, but the foundational piece of how do you become more efficient and automate tasks really hasn't changed. We just might be doing it in a slightly different way.
Yeah, I think, and Joe, the interesting thing here, so I was looking through N8N, and like, we're talking about this with a team in the past. I think what's interesting is the visibility and access to AI and tools surrounding AI are so interesting, right? Because that feels new, but the reality is like workflow management has been around for a long time. Like, you've got tons to, you got Zapier, there are all of these tools that have been out there, and then algorithmically we've been building things that make decisions around this as well. So but I think what's fun and the most interesting part is the access for everyday humans and people on much smaller scale to be able to have access to these tools, which I think is the most revolutionary part of it. Because those of us that have been playing in this space of automation for a while, this isn't super new to us, just this is the access to it and the availability of it and how fast it's changing and moving and tools are becoming available is different. But the foundational problem set isn't different. But like it's been so fun to watch access for the world really open up.
But I also think it's not just the access element of it, but it's also the change of thinking, the way you like interact with brands, with information, the way you search. All of this is going to is
Agreed.
Essentially impacting AI, like whether it's from a internal B2B perspective, or it's like consumers trying to discover things. So I think it would have this like massive impact on just how we interact with the world. Actually, I don't think it's like an over exaggeration to say that. I think it's going to have a profound impact on how we interact with everything. Like, at the moment, I would walk down the street and I will open my phone and I will never type anymore. I just talk to my like ChatGPT and search for things and, bounce around thoughts. The same thing happens, like, the same thing when it comes to internally how you build processes. It comes out of not just out of the perspective of what you know right now as an employee and what you can get internally from information. It's about all of this information you can wrap up from AI mixed up with your own knowledge. So I think it has a massive like impact on everyone.
I think one thing that's coming, so random example, but like planning an anniversary trip for my wife and I and talking through it to, I was using Gemini, but like, I want to do this, I want to surf, she wants to go to cities, whatever. And you can keep talking through that flow. The reason I bring that up is I think we're already starting to see AI used as kind of an insights engine, but I think that will get more and more into your everyday life of not just, I need this done, do it now, but more of a iterative, I'm doing this, okay, give me a little bit more, give me a little bit more, give me a little bit more. AI can really help with that. I think one key component though is while there is access to everyone for some of these tools, foundationally you have to have data that you trust.
100%.
Because it's very easy to be led astray based on this tool told me this, but it was reading from something that you didn't think was the actual answer. It's one thing pattern. I mean, we have a lot of data, but I think we're seeing that both from a positive side on our side, but also a negative from others, where if you're not building off of the right thing, it's going to give you the wrong answer. And so as we see more of this insights engine come to play and people using that to build their business, their product, whatever, you can go one of two ways very quickly. And it can be a big positive for you, but you have to be careful.
Yeah, let's talk about sexy data, guys. I mean, like we are on the AI for e-commerce podcast, so like 100%. This is something that I write about, and sometimes I feel like everybody's like, oh, yawning, but it's so important.
Yeah.
And generally, like people have a bit of a mental breakdown or like a blockage when they start, like somebody starts talking about data. But like, let's simplify it. Okay, so you are, let's say, a slightly bigger Amazon operator or a slightly bigger e-commerce operator. Like, how do you start building data hygiene? Like, essentially, the sort of the infrastructure to have solid data that will help you then later on doing sophisticated things with AI.
Well, that's a tough question, right? Because you've got, I mean, we start with kind of where we made this bet years ago that data would be the absolute unlock, right? And like this is why Pattern is actually uniquely positioned as an AI native e-commerce accelerator, because we've been collecting data from, and it's not just Amazon, right? Amazon's not enough. Like there are marketplaces globally and consumer transactions that we've been collecting for years, and how people buy, what people think, how people interact with ads. Like we've got a disgusting, something like, I think the last number we put out there is like 46, 47 trillion data points, which is an unreal number, right?
I'm just going to say disgusting amount. I know
it doesn't even make sense. Like your brain's like, if I said 47 million or 47 trillion, it feels like the same number. But the reality is it's so much information. So to be able to house that, I mean, you just said it, like, how do you keep how do you keep it? I think I say this and it might be a little bit sad, but you can't like figure this out on the way. Like you have to understand the problem you're solving and how you can be able to scale. Because like you will, this is from professional data people, right? These are data engineers, these are architects that just think about housing this much data and information, and both the cost, the structure, the access. Like what do you put in cold storage? What do you pull down that you have access? Like how do you make sure that the data is compliant? Like there are like so many small things that need to be correct. And the reality is like, you can't just like figure it out. This is something where there's a ton of expertise that is focused on the underlying data, because AI built on data garbage is terrible, right? Like it's not going to do anything good. It won't derive anything unique. But that is where there's going to be unique insights. Because what you said is you have access to ChatGPT and everything else, but everyone has the same access to information in that scenario. We have access to all unique first-party data effectively that allows us to create unique insights and unique actions as a result of those things. And the reality is those are the people that are going to win long term. And that's why we're so bullish about where we are positioned, is because we have incredible opportunity with data that other people don't have. And we've been collecting it for years. So I think maybe my short answer is this is a long game. You cannot collect it. You can't buy it. You can't grab it from people that have it. This is a long game. You need to be able to establish. And the thing that I ask myself and my team all the time is like, if we build something, if we were to 100x that process, would it survive? And if the answer is no, then don't do that thing. Don't even build it in the first place. Because if we can't, and that's true for physical processes, that's true for virtual processes. If we're going to build a task to be done and we cannot do it 1,000,000 times in a row, 1,000,000,000 times in a row, don't do it, because it's not going to work. So I think that's how you fight some incrementalism, is you get yourself in this process that you're like, and if I don't know the answer to that, I need to find somebody that can. It's pretty critically important as you think about collecting data specifically in this scenario, because like, oh my God, if I all of a sudden quadruple and now I can't house the data, I'm gonna have to build the entire architecture backward. And to your point, hygiene is super critically important with data, and nobody really cares about that. People actually care about, but it's such a critically important thing as you think about scaling it.
I don't know. Have you heard the analogy, like back in the day, the gold miners, like a few people got rich, a lot of people lost all their money, but everybody needed jeans. And that's why Levi's got huge.
Yeah.
There's the same thing here. And the reason I've heard this before is it was talking about NVIDIA, of how like everybody needs chips, in order to build out AI tools. Well, the other side of that is everyone needs data. So there's going to be a lot of tools, companies, whatever, popping up here and there, but foundationally, everyone needs data. And so it's the same story that we've heard in the past with like Google, and they had the information, they had the data. Same thing to Rob's point. Well, yeah, and so whoever has the data is going to be able to do the most with it. So we sit on a lot of data that gives us that foundational piece of trust. Others, like you said, Amazon has tons of data. They're going to be able to do things that others just can't do because they have the data. So this is another one of those times where there's a bunch of gold miners out there, but there's somebody sitting on the back end giving data to whoever wants it. And, they're going to have success.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like this is the thing, if we really like just zone in for a second on the AI gold rush, there is the sexy top layer, basically all the AI wrappers or the nice kind of like front-facing tools, which obviously to an extent impressive, but actually not such a like high moat. but the things like data, like electricity, like water, all the things that are underpinning AI that are not sexy, obvious, and actually quite difficult to actually enter are going to be where really the scale lies.
Yep.
From your perspective, I mean, like obviously one of your modes is data. Like, I watched your fantastic presentation at in Iceland, which was all about your logistics and your internal operations. Like, what are your kind of like main modes, or like how did you build something that is so impressive?
Well, I mean, if you think about what I said it before, like you need to be able to sell stuff, you need to be able to move stuff, right? And so if we think about the sell stuff side, that is like we choose great products, we choose great partners, we support those partners, we go all in with them, we have skin in the game, right? Like we've got kind of like ad tech and the underlying data and all that. And then on the moving side, it's actually really hard to move stuff really well. You talk about boring things that people want to fall asleep to, like AI is exciting right now. Let's talk about supply chain, right? Like it's generally real boring.
Supply chain.
But like it's the same kind of vein though. Like think about Amazon for a second. If you think about Prime, like Prime is such a powerful brand. Like Amazon, yes, but like Amazon was built basically on the backbone of Prime, right? Like there were a lot of players. One of the unique things that Amazon did was they owned all of their own fulfillment and supply chain, which was really unique. It feels crazy now. Like, of course, Amazon does that thing. But if you go back into the .com boom, like there were a bunch of people in this space. Like Amazon was not the only one. They weren't the first one. They weren't the last. Like they were not what they ended up doing better than most is they got selection, right? Like that's one, which is pretty normal. But like they figured out how to put two things in the same box and owning the supply chain. That supply chain, that ability to create promise, it's like people talking about fast shipping. It was just actually guaranteed shipping. It was trust is what built the Prime brand, right? Within Amazon. And today it is actually like you can study this. It's super interesting around people. Conversion increases if they know when it's going to be delivered. It's not necessarily that it has to be super fast. It's the known entity of doing that. And that's it was a foreign concept at the time, and Amazon made it a thing, but they only do that if their supply chain exists in that way. So building something that is super repeatable, super scalable is really unique. And the reality is people that generally build products and people that are really good operators are generally not the same human. It's like almost never the same person, right? Like you might get lucky, but the reality is that is very much not true. So we've built the fastest supply chain into marketplaces globally. We are the fastest. We are generally the cheapest from a transportation perspective because we're cranking stuff into Amazon or other marketplaces globally fastest. And so at the end of the day, we could have a great product. We could have the best marketing. We could have great, AI tools that create content and blah, 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 blah. But if it's not in the right place at the right time, it literally doesn't matter. And so we've invested tens of millions of dollars into a supply chain infrastructure that is powered by our own technology, which delivers the fastest supply chain in the world. So it is so critically important and not sexy and all the things, but it is something that is so critically important. It's the difference between brands making it or not making it in so many ways. And it's something that generally people think about 10th on the list when it really should be like first or third or something, definitely at the top of the list.
Yeah, 100%. And what I remember is like how impressive the actual, setup in your warehouses is like, to me, it looked like very similar to what I've seen from an Amazon point of view. It's like, is it built on the similar model?
I, of course, did not copy anything from Amazon, just to be super clear. But I mean, there's only so many ways.
You were inspired.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I 8 years at Amazon, I was in that environment. But the reality is, what we've done, there's some foundational things in how you interact with inventory, no matter what, right? It doesn't matter if it's a Walmart, Amazon, like whatever, you're in a WMS. But we have a few things that actually drove like the ethos, if you will, of what we were building. And those things we're the fastest supply chain into marketplaces. So we've got some of these tenets that actually drive every single one of our decisions, right? We're marketplace agnostic is another one of these things. we're seller agnostic, right? So if your stuff were to flow through our warehouses, it flows exactly the same way as ours. Our associates don't know it's yours. They don't know it's ours. They don't care. One of the key things is removing decision points. And that is true for tools and systems, but most importantly for human beings. That means that more people can come in, we can scale. It means we can put this in Poland, where we've got it operating. We can put it in the UK. We can put it in Australia. We can put it in Asia. We can put it in Hebron, Kentucky. We can put it in like wherever that would be. And whoever is interacting with that, it's going to be removing decisions, which increases quality and also increases speed, right? So that ability for us to do that becomes really scalable. I built it super different than the way Amazon does that thing. We combine a bunch of processes across requirements that need to happen, regardless of if it's in an Amazon or Walmart or whatever that would be. But we did mechanize it, right? Like we are using automation, we're using robotics, we're using a lot of the things that allow us to be able to scale in a really unique way. Nobody has built what you saw a little bit into it. It's very fun to take people to the warehouse and show what we built, because it is actually Bryce and I were talking to this brand. This is a couple months ago now. They interviewed, what was it, Bryce? It was like 19 brands or something like that.
Yeah.
They went to where it was the most robust RFP I've ever seen. And they came to our warehouse and they were like, it is not even like, you're not even playing the same game. Was the phrase that he said. Like, this is completely different. And so the investment there is really unique because it is not something that brands have the ability to do, right? We're spending millions of dollars on supply chain architecture, right? Like a brand can't do that, never will be able to do that. So we do have a really unique offering, and it is a pretty critical piece of success on any marketplace globally.
And I mean, supply chain has, to be fair, like the whole field has been changing so much in the last, let's say, 5 years, but how has supply chain like changed in this time, and sort of, what, I guess, were the spanners in the works throughout that journey that you have essentially created?
Supply chain has completely shifted in so many. I mean, like, think about it's kind of been the most tumultuous, like 5 or 6 years, maybe in many decades for a supply chain, right? Like globalization has been obviously happening and increasing over the past 50 years. But the last 5 years has been a pretty acute shift with brands actually, and sellers and retailers understanding their supply chain matters a lot more. And we've had more kind of whiplash than we've seen maybe ever. And it's just been in such a short period of time. So I think the way that we think about even where we manufacture and where brands are moving stuff into the world, like how they're using different opportunities for manufacturing. I think actually manufacturing is the next major industry to shift and change. I think we will start seeing things get closer. And the technology around manufacturing goods is old, especially in the US. It is bad. It's actually bad. Like we are very, very old in the way we think about manufacturing, but how do we think about more modular, better opportunities? Supply chain is completely shifted. It means that putting things on a boat and waiting 55 days, if we fast forward 10 years, I think that shifts completely. Like, I do not think that we're playing the same game from a supply chain perspective. So the last 5 years, I do not believe are indicative of the next 10 for many reasons. One of those is that like tariffs, COVID, right? It's just all of these kind of things all compiling together. I think a lot will change in the next 10 years about where we manufacture, how we manufacture, and how we move around. I think that it's super ripe industry for change.
Yeah, and built into what Rob just said, I think, we're talking about AI, we're talking about a bunch of different topics. Part of that is, how do I scale? How do I get better? And part of that is, how do I improve my cash flow? How do I improve, revenue, profitability? Built into what he just said, a lot of brands do this. If you manufacture overseas and they do it by batch. So I'm going to produce everything and I'm going to ship the whole batch over to the United States, and it's going to sit in a warehouse, and I'm going to be sitting on 6 to 12 months of inventory, and I'm going to slowly sell through it. Well, the difference between that and like whether it be closer to home or you're doing it in smaller batches and you're shipping it over faster, the difference in those two potentially is millions of dollars. But brands just don't think about it. They're like, this is the way it's always been done. This is the way I have to do it. My manufacturer told me this is the way I have to do it. But the difference between those two things is huge. And you see some brands that get it and they're pivoting and it's making a huge impact in their business, bottom line, top line, both. But there's so many nuances within what he just said that can have a major impact on your business and the success of your business. Obviously, sitting on 12 months of inventory is probably not the most optimal state for a business, but a lot do it. And so supply chain, again, it's like you got to sell stuff, you got to move stuff. People just don't think about it. It's not sexy, but it potentially has the largest impact on your business that you could possibly have.
I think this is the episode where the word sexy has been used the most.
We'll keep doing it.
We'll just keep going. We'll just keep going. I love that also we're talking about completely non-sexy stuff. I feel like this is, false advertising.
We're trying to make it sexy.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, let's talk about the sexy part of this, which is, AI is definitely, like, I feel like AI is massively underused, especially in this like part of the e-commerce cycle. And, there's obvious things like forecasting, but I guess the first thing I want to ask is, from, let's say, the operations you guys are running in logistics right now, what are the ripe for generative AI like use cases? And then if we take on slightly more futuristic view and we're looking at Amazon's Vulkan and all of the sort of the more robotics like optimizations included with AI, like where do you see this heading to?
Man, you know what? Here's the problem. All the things that we're going to use AI for in this space are, I'll say it again, not super sexy, but the outcomes and the outputs are really sexy.
What about the outputs then?
The outputs are. So, I mean, but it actually, this is where it does matter. This is where you start to boil down. Like, so for example, let's think about D2C fulfillment for a second. What is the optimal box to put something in? That is something that algorithmically we have been trying to solve for a long time, right? You're doing liquid fill, you're like doing all these things. This is where you have AI and like actually can have a big impact, because shipping errors is horribly expensive. I actually just bought something from a major retailer. It was apparel. And this is the curse of working in shipping your whole life, by the way. Every box I get, I'm like, this is shit. Like, this is terrible. Like, shipping all this error, it's whatever, right? Like, but I cannot tell you, like, it was like 22% full in this box. And I'm like, this is a crime, right? Like,
a precise number, by the way, 22%.
I know I made that up, but you remember, like, it was very underutilized. So if we think about like stuff like that you are literally burning cash on, there's some really interesting ways that we can utilize AI to solve problems that are like that kind of thing, which in the past we've been like, I don't know, I can't figure it out, so I'll just try to negotiate better rates and just get more repeatable boxes. And then you go to stuff like, so one of the big problems we have to solve all the time is, how do we need to prep something to go to Amazon, right? So AI is fantastic at classification and product classification. So right now, one of the things that we have to do, and we are continuing to focus on, is in our warehouses, if it's glass, for example, what kind, like, if I take a bunch of product attributes, what is the correct prep required to reduce damage, to decrease consumer complaints, to whatever that would be? And how do we get that in words to an associate at a station that does that in the right series of events that reduces down, cost for speed and supply, like those kinds of problems. Actually, we've got tools we haven't had in the past that we can utilize and able to do those. So like those kind of like boring-ish things, there's a million of them. Like, doing world-class operations and moving stuff is not this like giant light switch. It is a million small things. So we break down the most impactful things, stuff like removing decision points for someone on how to prep something, removing decision points on what box should be utilized in order to optimize the packaging to reduce damage, et cetera, et cetera. So all this underlying data feeding into something that is a unique view of that is actually way more interesting than I probably would have thought of a few years ago. And our ability to do that is at speed is kind of unmatched in history. So I think we're pretty excited about the uses within the four walls of the warehouse that we can utilize this. But you did say forecasting, and forecasting is one of the hardest things brands have to do, and sellers, retailers. It's literally wrong every single time. Every time. Every single time,
Why
right?
is it forecast, Rob.
Yeah, like it's always wrong. So it's really about how close can you get and how fast can you recover, right? Like that's the key when thinking about forecasting. And so on both of those major problems, it's a pretty, like to Bryce's point, how do we think about what's the right amount to have of inventory? Where is a super hard problem and one of the most critical ones that brands have, and we can utilize we can use AI to help us make some of those decisions better, but it is the underlying data. You have this homogenous data that everyone else has. You're not going to get unique insights from it. Like really having those unique insights or unique data points from consumers, that's where I think that's where we shine. And I think that's where we have the most unique value proposition as we continue to move forward.
I think that goes back to that insights engine. And like you probably don't even want to be in stock 100% of the time because of the diminishing returns that come to getting to that point. Like throwing more inventory into Amazon doesn't mean it's actually going to help, because as Rob always says, it's going to go to El Paso and it's going to get stuck there forever. But so there's it's that insights engine of, do you have the information to tell you what is, for this product or for this brand, what does optimized look like? And it might look different than this product and this brand over here, but you have to have the information behind it to be able to figure that out. And that you see a lot of people, a lot of companies, a lot of brands chasing that, and they're making decisions based on, ideal outcome that maybe isn't the right outcome. And so that, again, the data, the just the insights engine that is starting to become a really big thing is going to continue to be a huge part of how we do business.
Yeah. I want to take it now a little bit away from operations, logistics, and that part, but more into connecting with the consumer. So obviously, we've been talking about Amazon. You are like, a lot of your footprint is on Amazon, but like, how do you match essentially the more complex consumer journey? So like, the consumers that live outside of Amazon or use Amazon as a final touch point, like how has your strategy with brands like essentially tackled that?
Well, I think one of the cool things is that our data is consolidated. There's a lot, like Amazon has a lot of Amazon data, but Amazon doesn't have as much non-Amazon data, and Walmart has a lot of Walmart data, right? Like we that's why that marketplace agnostic view has helped us a ton, because we can actually glean insights and traffic and kind of a journey across these marketplaces, or a Shopify or whatever that would be, right? So I think about this internationally. It's a completely different customer journey in China, for example, right? So it's something like 80% of consumers interact with a customer service agent prior to making a purchase, which is like in my American brain is obscene. It is insane. Like I don't even want to talk to Bryce, right? Like I don't want to talk to somebody before I buy something. I don't want to talk to somebody after I buy something. Like it's a crazy concept for me to think about. But how do we think about meeting that customer and for that listing on that marketplace on a Tmall or a Pinduoduo? It's a completely different type. And then you get into social selling and you think about a TikTok shop. We're a very large TikTok shop seller. And so as you think about all of these different individual pieces, being able to have a central data set that absorbs from all of those and be able and is able to say this type of consumer on this platform needs this thing, that is stupid powerful. And so it is really about identifying where they are in that journey, if they're bouncing between different marketplaces as best we can, and how they classify into different categories and types. And then what do we serve and what do we provide to that type of customer? It is a disgustingly hard problem. But it is something that you can't solve if you aren't connected to all those. That's why I would expect us more and more and more and more and more to focus on different marketplaces and different areas of the world. Like we've been investing very heavily, right? This is public information now. Like we've been investing very heavily and we'll continue to invest internationally because we think that the opportunity is just like we're just scratching the surface. But that does require different type of consumer interaction, different type of data. And an architecture that can handle and observe that.
And so which is, would you say, the largest kind of international opportunity right now for Pattern?
I mean, it's hard to say that China is not, right? Like not the big, it's an interesting thing because where there's, what is it? I think globally 22%, I think is what like e-commerce is globally.
Mm.
But you've got some of these areas that are extremely concentrated, right? I think South Korea is like a 46, 47% e-commerce. I actually don't know that, I don't want to make up the China one, but it's more penetrated than the US. I think the US is basically in, the average. I think we're right in like the low 20s for penetration for e-commerce. So the reality is, like, there are giant markets with lots of human beings on there that have more e-commerce penetration, which means we're probably not done, both here in the US and then internationally. It's not 100%, but we actually don't know if that's 52% in Korea, or is that 71% in South Korea. Like, we really don't know. But there are some big markets out there with big opportunities that brands in the US, for example, have to interact with people completely differently. We think that there's a bunch of value we can continue to provide, as we're experts in lots of those different areas. So it's hard to not point at the Asian markets and say that those are not some of the biggest opportunities that exist.
But to that point, we get a lot of brands that say, hey, we want you to take us to China. And that may not be the right decision. Yes, it's a huge opportunity, but is your price point right? Does your brand resonate? Do they even know who you are? You're going to end up spending millions of dollars to try and build your brand, and it may not work. And so sometimes the largest market isn't the best market for a brand. And like you said, South Korea, maybe you have more brand presence there than you do somewhere else, or even going to UAE instead, even though it's smaller, but you could take over and it might be less expensive to enter. And so obviously Asia, yes, largest market by far, just number of people and the penetration of e-commerce and all of that, but doesn't necessarily mean it's the right market for everyone.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I've been speaking recently with a lot of sellers who are looking at even just like Amazon Japan, and how much of a completely different beast it is. Then you just can't apply pretty much the same rules. I mean, probably similar operational rules, but like from cultural perspective. And I think especially with like, I guess maybe not so like well-threaded markets like China, South Korea, from a Western perspective, it is a challenge.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, depending on the type of product that you sell, there's regulation issues. There's, like selling supplements in Australia, for example, is super, super difficult. And getting, working with Health Canada and selling in Canada on Amazon or any other platform, like, there are just, the complexities here pile up really fast. And it is very challenging to figure out. So is it the right product? Is it the right category? Is there right, that's a tough thing. That's something we help brands with this all the time to navigate. They're like, I want to go to China. We're like, you shouldn't, but UAE is a great opportunity, right? Like, helping navigate that is one of our, I mean, it's one of the things we do best, I think.
Yeah, I went out to Australia to help launch Amazon Australia with Amazon. And right when we got there, like, let's grab all the US brands, bring them down, we'll sell everything. And come to find out, Australians don't match as closely with the US brands as they do with like European brands, British. There's a lot of British people in Australia. And it's one of those things, you have to do your research. You have to know what resonates with that market before going in. Otherwise, you can end up spending a lot of money for nothing.
Completely different field, but like, do you guys think that physical retail is dead?
No,
absolutely
not. No. I think that physical retail will always have a place. I think it will continue to change. I think it will continue to shift. And I think the experience, I think you'll see some confluence of like physical retail location and what e-commerce continues to feel like. Like, Walmart has an incredible opportunity. I think with the stats, like over 80% of the US population lives within 10 miles of a Walmart, for example. So we're just focused on the US for a little bit. Walmart hasn't figured out how to use physical in-store very well, right? Like, it's not a thing. So, but you can use fungible inventory in physical stores to create a really powerful engine if you could do it the right way, and they haven't figured it out yet. But that doesn't mean they won't, and other retailers like that. So, but also there's a tangible experience that some people still want to do, especially in some industries. Like, do you think, like, I think apparel, it's been so interesting to see apparel grow. It's obviously like, but I think that's mostly selection, right? Like, it's just like access now to buy that shirt and those pair of shoes. And like, now there's more competition, right? Because like, oh, that's the same t-shirt basically for like half the price because blah, 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 blah. But I still think that there's incredible value around going in and seeing something tangible. So I do not think it's dead. Do I think it changes? Do I think it shifts? Yes, but do I think we go 50% e-commerce? No, I don't. Certainly not in the short term. So I think many industries, when they're up against the wall, innovate, and I think physical retail will do the same. We'll just have to see what they come up with.
I think it's that interaction between the two. Like, I have kids, I don't want to go shopping, so we use Walmart delivery for a lot of groceries. Well, that's coming from a physical store down the street. It's getting delivered to my house. I'm buying it online. And I'm not saying that's what everyone's going to go to, but there's this interaction between physical and online. And I think we'll continue to see that evolve, and what that looks like. Like, we're already, do your returns at this facility, even though you bought it at this facility. Yep. I think that will continue to happen. And at some point we'll see the two mesh closer and closer together. But to Rob's point, there is always this, like, I want to touch and feel it. I want to see the product before I buy it. And so I think we're all still trying to figure out what that looks like, and how does that make my life easier to go in store versus not. But it's not dead. We're still figuring out how those two collide.
I will give one counterpoint. We're old people at this point, right? Also, like, maybe we're wrong.
He's not invited to the podcast anymore. We're young people.
I come up with this analogy where I'm like, I'll bet you the people that manufactured wagon wheels were super against the automobile, right? They were like, people still need wagons. Like, they might want cars over here, but like, they still are going to want their wagons. Like, we're going to be okay. I don't know, right? Like, I think the reality is, like, maybe someone's building a car and we aren't even, like, we're still hanging on to some of that. And so I think, I don't know what this looks 15, 20, 30 years down the road. Do I think that there's still physical retail for the next foreseeable future, 5, 10, 15 years? Yes, I think that there's definitely a place for it. Beyond that, I think the consumer that gets money, that is the generation below us, right? Basically, because we're all young and spry, but like the ones that are a little bit younger and sprier, like, they might have a very different buying behavior than, like, just like we do from our parents, right? So I don't know. I mean, I also want to make sure that I don't hold on to, like, well, it's always been around physical retail. Who knows? It might shift.
Nice. One last question, because, like, this has flown by so quick. I can speak to you guys for another hour at least. What's next for you guys? What's next for Pattern after the IPO? Like, where is the future?
I actually don't think it's. I think the reality is what's got us here won't get us there in some ways. But the foundational piece of what we are, I really do believe that we are uniquely positioned as an AI native e-commerce accelerator in a way that others cannot and haven't. I mean, this is the problem with the aggregators. This is the problem with a brand trying to go on their own in so many ways. To be like, it's good to get to a certain point, but I really do believe that we are very uniquely positioned to be able to through the transition of the AI gold rush, if you will, and the AI craze, as things settle in a little bit. The winners here are very likely going to be the ones that utilize data in unique ways and can move stuff and sell stuff better than anyone else. And so I think our focus remains partnering with great brands that have great products and continuing to hit the gas for them, globally. So I think all this really is for us. Like, we again, milestone, yes, but all it does is help us make sure that we go hit the gas in accelerating. But foundationally, we're going to solve the same problems that we've solved before, because they're the right problems that brands need to solve. Different flavors, different ways, but the thing that got us here is probably going to get us. We have quite a bit of legs still, I think.
Nice. Bryce, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'd say, same thing. The IPO is exciting and it's a milestone, but it's not like yesterday we did something and then today we do something different. We have to keep going. I think that's a big focus internally of just, this doesn't mean we let off the gas. We have to continue to do the work that gets us to the next phase. But to Rob's point, I think we're positioned well. We have a lot of those things that are foundationally necessary in the environment that we're working within right now. AI will be a big part of that, and we plan on it being a big part of that. So I think, yeah, we're positioned well. I think more and more people will continue to figure out just what pattern is and how it works and why it is successful as we continue to go forward. And so we're really excited. The IPO was awesome. It's a really cool thing. It doesn't happen to everyone. And so we're, fortunate to go through that. But now we got to continue to prove ourselves, and we're excited to do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming. This was a really interesting episode. We talked about a lot of sexy stuff that weren't sexy, but we made them sexy. And for our listeners and viewers, please tune in next week again. We're going to have a really, really interesting guest. If you're following us on Spotify, hit follow. If you are on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. And yeah, thank you so much, and see you guys next week.
Thanks, Joe.